So as we move a few display cabinets around in the collection, I thought I'd take the opportunity today to talk to you about the Vickers gas-operated machine gun, commonly called the Vickers K. An air-cooled weapon, high rate of fire, very popular because of its use by the Special Air Service on their jeeps during the Second World War. But today we'll go in a little bit more detail and talk about the wider uses of the gun, its origins and its technical abilities as well. So what we have here are a pair of Vickers #1 Mark 1 machine guns, gas-operated machine guns, mounted on a twin mounting as would have been used on the front of Special Air Service jeeps. The last time these went out of the collection was to support a battlefield study looking at some of the operations of the Special Air Service in France in 1944, and that's why they're set up in this way. On the right hand side of the gun you can see the spent case the deflector case and the spent case catcher. Normally you'd see these in place in aircraft where they'd be inside because they were originally aircraft guns, but you do see them on vehicles as well to stop the spent cases getting in the footwell, particularly on the front mounted guns. So 100 round drum magazine on top of the guns is released by pushing this catch forward and it lifts off like so. We know that spare magazines in the jeeps are often carried in standard British Army biscuit tins, certainly for the 1st Airborne Reconnaissance Squadron who use these on their jeeps as well. Now the guns can't be disassembled on the mounting, so we're going to have to take one off of the mounting to show you how it breaks down into its component parts. Here's the gun taken off its mounting, ready to be disassembled into its component parts, which is quite a simple task. It doesn't need any particular tools, just a screwdriver if you really want to, but most of it can be done by hand. So the first thing that needs to be done is these two pins here, that are locking pins. They can be just taken out like so, and that takes out the trigger assembly, the connecting, the recoil rod, so trigger assembly, the recoil rod and the recoil spring. So a double coiled spring there as well to accommodate the high rate of fire. Once that's off, this pin fits in underneath here, can be taken off, taken out, and the deflector casing can be disassembled and put to one side. So you can see these loops here where the pin for the deflector casing fits. Simple like that. You can then take out the bolt face, the bolt and the piston like so, come off like that. This U-sheet piece comes off, which is the barrel retaining, and then the piston rod cover and the barrel, in this case a dummy barrel, has been taken off as well. So this is actually a training barrel, so a solid cast piece on the deactivated weapon. So there we go, component parts disassembled. Very simple. If you want to take it a little bit further, and to do so it's useful to understand how the weapon was used in its different roles. As we've said, this is the #1 Mark 1 gun, but if you use your screwdriver to undo these pieces, here is a assembly where you can attach a cable, so you can remote fire the weapon. You can take that off. This will remain in place, but on the #2 Mark 1 gun, this cover would be replaced with a butt, and this will connect into a mechanism for a pistol grip and a trigger, a standard trigger. On the that's the #2 Mark 1. A later variant, the #2 Mark 1B, had this replaced with a Bren part, actually, an extended rod underneath, which would have a bipod as well. We'll talk about that in a moment. So whilst the video for reassembly is happening in the background, I'll just briefly talk about some of the other the variants of the Vickers gas-operated machine gun. So this is the #1 Mark 1, as you've seen and we've talked about. The #2 Mark 1 we briefly just touched on there, which was a land variant, and then the #2 Mark 1B was a variant particularly developed for Army Commandos to use in assaults, So high rate of fire, fitted with a bipod, needed guys to carry lots and lots of ammunition. So what you can see here are some ammunition pouches specially developed for Army Commandos and used in the Operation Overlord D-Day assaults of Normandy in June 1944. Each pouch would carry 100 rounds of a K-gun magazine, so you'd need quite a few guys in a team. So I said I'd talk about the magazine a little bit more. It's a 100 round magazine with a web handle on top, very similar in appearance in the top to the Bren 100 round magazine, but it's not the same. It has a different feed lips on the bottom. So the Bren has a much more elongated set of feed lips, but it's loaded in a very similar manner. You need a coiling spanner or handle to fit in here because it is under tension. It will spring rounds out. Yeah, this is all under tension to help with the high rate of fire. They did actually trial whether you could adapt these to fit onto Brens and vice versa, but it failed. Yeah, it wasn't possible. It would have needed too much adaptation. It might as well come out of the factory built in that special way. Taking a look up the guns here, there are 3 different points where sights can fit. One on the left hand side of the receiver, and then you've got some holes in the on top of the barrel to mount ring and bead sights for anti-aircraft use. When mounted on aircraft, a reflector sight was used, and this enhanced vision in the air and could be used in single mountings onto that dovetail sight on the left of the gun, or to control 4 guns. So we've spoken a lot about the SAS and their use of the Vickers K guns. They carried on doing so into the 1950s and the early 60s when they were using them on their Land Rovers. The Long Range Desert Group had also used them at the early part of the Second World War, and we know that the American Rangers used them at Point de Hoc, and this very famous photo shows a K gun as a grave marker. But we've got a separate video on that you can go and see by clicking the link in the top right. Whilst we're talking about the Vickers gas operated guns in the front of the display cabinet here, you might well notice the traditional sort of box fed 30 round box fed light machine guns in the rear. Now 3 of these, with the exception of this one up the top here, which is recognizable as a Bren, the others are Vickers Berthiers. They're the Class Al light machine gun that Vickers produced and are actually what the gas operating mechanism within the Vickers K is derived from. So the aircraft gun was an iteration of the Vickers Berthier mechanism. Vickers started with these in the 1920s, and through various iterations they produced different types of the Vickers Berthier for commercial sale. It was a competitor to the Bren in the original trials in the 30s, but the Bren succeeded, well the ZB succeeded over the Vickers Berthier in the British trials. This example in the bottom of the Vickers Berthiers here is actually a Mark III Vickers Berthier produced at the rifle factory at Ishapur, and this is what India adopted and then produced their own versions of. So this was in use with the Indian Army until about 1942 when they started to receive Bren guns, or the British Indian Army as it were, when they started to receive Bren guns to replace these. So I hope that's given you some more information on what's certainly a pair of the most popular weapons in the collection. Apologies for the church bells. That's what comes of filming in a quintessentially English village on a Sunday afternoon. There's loads more information on the website, loads of manuals to download about the Vickers gas operated guns, the Vickers Berthiers, all the different commercial variants around the world as well, including some manuals in Spanish there for those international readers. Thank you for watching. Please remember to like and share the video and subscribe to the channel. Please support us on Patreon if you're able to, and let us know of anything you'd like to see in the future. I look forward to hearing from you.